Last night's slate in MLB DFS was a rough one because it kind of felt like NBA. We had, the late rainout with the White Sox game, which I wasn't really expecting to be a rainout. Kind of got caught off guard by that one. I knew it was a possibility, but I was under the assumption it would play. So I had to scramble to get rid of Carlos Rodon and a couple of White Sox stacks as well. Thought that was fine. Then we get into the Padres game. The game has already started, and I realize Will Myers is suddenly not playing. He did wind up hitting later, but it was a messy slate to say the least. So I was hoping I would be able to come to today, open up a fresh slate, and feel really good about a lot of things. It ain't happening. It's a 4-game slate tonight. It's really rough. There's like one pitcher I can tolerate. There aren't a ton of stacks that I feel good about. I think it's a single entry night. I think it's a night where you just try to escape with no scars. But thankfully, the good thing is that if it's a rough slate for us, it is a rough slate for everyone else as well. So we can still win some money. Let's try to do that right now. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to preview Thursday night's 4-game main slate with lock set for 7:20. So it may be a rough slate, but at least we have 15 additional minutes to ruin those lineups for today. Lock at 7:20 before the Braves and the Cubs game. The good thing is there isn't a lot of weather to note for today. With that White Sox-Detroit game being taken off the slate, nothing to deal with there. So we are pretty much good to go, play things straight up, and see how things transpire. And, of course, we'll talk more about this slate later today on our MLB DFS Q&A. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern every weekday. FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. But after that, later on tonight, we have our NFL Draft live stream. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's with myself. JJ Zachariason will have his season-long projections updating live on air. We'll go through the implications of rookie picks there. We're going to have Brandon Gadula and I kind of going head-to-head with some win total projections based on how the draft picks fall and stuff like that. And also Ryan Williams making his numberFire and FanDuel debut. He'll be taking a DFS and best ball angle into this draft. We'll talk to him about a lot of good stuff and get to know Ryan too, which should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that for sure. That is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you are subscribed on FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter. And also, they're giving away a free jersey tonight. So if you want a free NFL jersey of your choosing, make sure you tune in, 8 p.m. Eastern. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Also coming up this week is the Kentucky Derby. Derby Saturday is almost here. If you're new to horse racing or have never bet with TVG before, now is the perfect time to give it a shot because you can bet the Kentucky Derby risk-free. That is right. You'll get up to $200 back if your horse doesn't win the Derby. And if you already have a TVG account, you can still get in on the action, getting up to $10 back if your horse finishes in second or third. It is all part of the money back special, and it's available on select races this Saturday at Churchill Downs. TVG gives you all the tools to tackle the Derby. Just sign up with the promo code COVER. That is promo code COVER if you want to bet the Kentucky Derby risk-free. That is exclusively on TVG.com and the TVG app. Go to TVG.com/cover for more details. If you want a Derby preview podcast, we also did record one with Megan Devine yesterday on the Covering the Spread podcast feed. So just find that there. Where the promo code comes from too. But find that by searching for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk through this scary, scary slate. Pitching preview for Thursday. Trevor Bauer is the highest salary pitcher at $11,000. Cool, we can live with that. Number 2 is Kyle Gibson. Okay, he's $9,200. Number 3 is Luke Weaver, who is $75,000. No one else is higher than $6,500. Plug your nose, pick one, and dive in. And the good thing is we do have one. And on FanDuel, you're picking just one pitcher, so you just pick Trevor Bauer. He is obviously the top guy on this slate, and it's not close. I think that what you do for tonight is you build around him and just figure out the rest from there. He's facing the Brewers, which are still a plus matchup. They have an 87 WRC plus against righties with a 27% strikeout rate. There's no Christian Yelich yet, so the only real question you could have about Bauer would be whether we can actually trust what we've seen. His overall numbers this year are great. There's no question about that. We just have to dig in to see if there's been a dip recently. And the reason is because he was put under investigation for potentially using sticky substances on a ball. That was after his Colorado start. And the concern would be, okay, I'm being investigated. I'm going to stop doing whatever I was doing that may or may not have contributed to the big year I had last year, and maybe that leads to a fall-off. That has not led to a fall-off thus far. He's made 2 starts since that time, both against the Padres. He allowed 3 total earned runs with 16 strikeouts. His swinging strike rate was 18.4% in that second game. That was the second time the Padres had seen him against a very good offense. He's not facing a great offense tonight. This to me says we can still have faith in the longer-term data on Bauer, and the longer-term data says he's unquestionably the top guy on this slate. So I think it's like I said, a single entry kind of night. Lock in Bauer, figure out your stacks. I think that's just the way that I want to play things here. You don't really want to get too deep into this slate. But it's a podcast. I'll still talk about some other people. Just know Bauer's the one guy you can really feel good about for tonight. Gibson is my number 2. He's in a tough matchup facing the Red Sox, and they've been very good this year. So I don't want to use it. I just might be forced to, given the options elsewhere. I think he's number 2 behind Bauer. Don't feel great about it. That is a pretty wild trip for Gibson, given that he gave up 5 runs in a third of an inning back on opening day, but he's been very good ever since then. He's allowed just 2 total earned runs across his past 4 starts. That includes games against Toronto and the White Sox. So it's not just like he's mopping up on scrubs. He's been good. The other good thing with Gibson for DFS is that he goes deep into games, which helps boost his outlook quite a bit. In that first start, he threw a new cutter 25% of the time. He threw his changeup 16% of the time. He's altered that quite a bit in the 4 starts since then. Instead, he's using a curveball along with more four-seamers a bit more often. So I think the past 4 starts for Gibson, although it is cherry-picking by lopping off the first start, he has actually made changes since then. In that time, he has a 3.60 skill interactive ERA, just a 21% strikeout rate. But on this slate, that's actually not that terrible. He has done a good job with limiting walks and hard contact. I absolutely would not touch Gibson on any other slate. And again, I might not use him tonight. I could just go Bauer and log off. I'm going to try not to get there. It is really just Bauer for me. But if I had to rank someone second, it would be Kyle Gibson. The third option is Luke Weaver. I have very little confidence in him. I considered not even having a third pitcher here. That's how rough this slate is at pitcher. But I could see Weaver doing well. And I guess that's enough. So let's talk about him. I'll talk about Luke Weaver, and then you decide if you want to put him in your pitching pool for today. Weaver's facing the Rockies, which is a massive plus. They have an 81 WRC plus against righties with a 26% strikeout rate. That WRC plus is the worst number on the entire slate, and they don't draw walks. So if they're not in Coors, they're about as good of a matchup as you can possibly concoct. And Weaver's not bad. He had a 4.52 skill interactive ERA last year. That meant that his 6.58 ERA was a bit fluky. His ERA this year down to 4.57. His skill interactive ERA, 4.15. The reason I think he could be okay is that he does get some whiffs. He has an 11.1% swinging strike rate through his first 4 starts, which is the highest rate of his career, even though his strikeout rate is down. He faced this Rockies team in Coors. That was the first start of the year, so it's not recent. It was a while ago, so they're not super familiar with him anymore. He wasn't dazzling, but after that, he shut down the Reds at home. He had 8 strikeouts in that game. He's back at home today, so I think it's within the range of outcomes for Weaver to be the highest scoring pitcher of the night. I just don't have a super high level of confidence in that or in him in general. So the case for Weaver, if you want to consider it, is he gets whiffs. He has a great matchup. He's at home. If that sells you, feel free to take the plunge. But again, for me, this slate is all about just minimizing my exposure to non-Bauer pitchers and trying to avoid the landmines. So full disclosure, I might not use those 2 guys, but if I had to rank the second and third, it would be Gibson 2, Weaver 3, and then just close your eyes and pray. For stacks, it's better than pitching, but it's also pretty rough. Most of the good offenses on this slate are in tougher matchups. There are 1.5 exceptions, I would say. The firm exception is the Dodgers against Eric Lauer. Lauer is making his first start of the year. He was called up from the alternate site, so it wasn't like an injury type thing. Called up from the alternate site. He started there because last year was really rough for Lauer. He started just 2 games and appeared in 4. He had a 5.81 skill interactive ERA with a 20% strikeout rate, and he walked a lot of batters. If we're trying to get a better idea of Lauer in terms of like a larger sample size, that likely comes from 2019. He had a full season at the start of there for San Diego. He had a 4.45 ERA and a 4.72 skill interactive ERA. So even those numbers are stack againstable. I'm going to keep going to that word. I think it's fun. Those numbers are stack againstable with a team as good as the Dodgers. He's not a big ground ball guy. He did a good job then of limiting hard contact. Just not sure if that will stick now, as we're 2 years removed from that time. Regardless, we can stack against him, especially with the Dodgers. He is a lefty. We prefer the Dodgers against righties, but I still think they're the top stacker tonight by a wide margin. The plus of them is that against lefties, we do get some value. I know Chris Taylor's salary has gone way up. Mookie Betts is not low salary, but A.J. Pollock is still $2,600. He's likely to hit 6 tonight. I'll take that for sure. Will Smith, $32. He did not play yesterday, so should be good to go today. He's a good hitter, especially against lefties. Could get Sheldon Neuse in there. He is a risk to leave for a pinch hitter. He's done that a couple of times when he started this year, but he had a good pop in the minors. He's $2,500. I think we can make them work with Bauer pretty easily. So hopefully we get Pollock and Newsom there. That makes it a lot easier. Go Smith, and then you're picking the studs between Justin Turner, Mookie Betts. And those guys' salaries aren't super high, so you can get to them with Bauer as well. Overall, though, the Dodgers definitely the top stack, and one we can stack with Bauer. The other at least decent team, they were the half I gave earlier in a plus matchup, is the Cubs. They're facing Bryce Wilson. He is working on 3 days rest. He threw 61 pitches last time out, so they decided to run him back out there again. I think the Cubs could get to him in this spot. Wilson has been back and forth between the majors and the minors since 2018 now. Couldn't really ever make it stick in the majors. And that was largely because his big league numbers were underwhelming, I would say. He's got 51 2/3 career innings. He has a 5.45 skill interactive ERA with an 18% strikeout rate and a 10.8% barrel rate allowed. He's not a ground ball guy either. And based on his 2019 AAA numbers, Wilson profiles as the kind of guy we like to stack against. He allowed a ball in play more than 70% of the time. He had a 45% ground ball rate. The ground ball rate's down to 37% in the big leagues. That's exactly what we want for stacking. Now, the Cubs have had their issues. They enter this game having been shut out in back-to-back games. That's not great. But I actually like Ian Anderson and Huascar Inoa quite a bit. Anderson I recommended as a value play that night. Inoa was someone I didn't use because of pitch count, but good numbers for him, so not a shock that he did well. This is a different situation. I think that both those guys are a lot better than Wilson. We did see the Cubs get to Charlie Morton back on Monday, I believe it was. So I would not be shocked if they break out of a slump here tonight. Among the value options, and that's kind of the focus here because we need to find ways to get up to Trevor Bauer, my favorite one is Jason Hayward pretty easily. He has a 36% hard hit rate and a 38% fly ball rate against righties this year. We also get the revenge game narrative, and it's been a while. He's had 3 games to get that the anger out, but revenge game for Jason Hayward either way. Tends to hit 5th or 6th. He's $2,500. I'll build around him for sure. I'd prioritize Anthony Rizzo over Wilson Contreras for the catcher/first baseman. If you're trying to figure out the studs there. I would also say Nico Horner's numbers are not great, but I'm willing to use him if he hits near the top of the order again. He actually hit leadoff a couple nights ago, or twice, and Rizzo was there last night. Probably expecting Horner to be 7th or 8th, but like even 7th, he could be a consideration if he helps you get to Bauer as your pitcher for the night. Now, I mentioned before that most of the good offenses are facing good pitchers. So if we want good matchups, we have to settle for bad offenses. That's what I'll be doing with the third stack in the Diamondbacks against Antonio Senzatela. Senzatela is a ground ball guy, and he used that to shut down the Diamondbacks in Coors Field this year. He was really rough. He is going to let up a lot of balls in play, though, which is what we are looking for. Senzatela is a different pitcher this year than he was last year because he's using a lot of sliders this year, fewer four-seamers. And sliders are good. If you have a low strikeout rate, you want to up your slider rate and try to get more whiffs. And likely a wise move for him. But it hasn't really moved the needle in terms of his peripherals. He has a 13% strikeout rate through 5 starts, a 7% walk rate, which means he's allowing the ball in play almost 80% of the time. He has allowed just a 6.8% barrel rate, and 52% of the balls in play against him have been ground balls. But the raw volume is high, and that's valuable. And yes, he did shut down this team at Coors Field, but they had 10 batted ball events with an exit velocity of at least 95 miles per hour. They were making decent contact. It just wasn't enough to truly beat him. I'm wondering if that'll change when they're seeing him a second time here. The Dodgers fared better against Senzatela in their second matchup. They're a much better offense, but I just don't think it hurts to have that baseline knowledge of what he's doing. So I'm going to put Arizona third today and hope they figured something out. The reason I couldn't put them higher, despite the fact that it's a pretty plus matchup, is that Sensatella he weirdly allows a lot more hard contact and fly balls to righties and lefties. And the Diamondbacks might have like 2 or 3 righties in their lineup tonight. So if they were more righty heavy, I know he's a righty, but like if they were more righty heavy, I might actually feel better about the Diamondbacks. So that does bump them down. It comes with more strikeouts, but like it's still like a 16% strikeout rate. So I think that does lead to a bump up for Carson Kelly and Wyatt Matheson. Matheson went deep last night. Felt good about that. Made me feel better about talking about him here today. Carson Kelly, very high salary, which I was kind of surprised to see, despite the fact he's been good. Very high salaried. So Matheson, good power numbers in the minors. Wouldn't be opposed to using him. Dalton Varshall got called up from the alternate site. I have a soft spot for Dalton Varshall because he's a Wisconsin guy from the Midwest. So hoping he gets in there. He's a lefty, so it's not going to be a situation where he benefits from the handedness, but there's a possibility Varshall hits high in the order. I like the hitting skills he showed in the minors, and I would not be shocked if he turns into a good hitter in the majors. Didn't really show that last year, but willing to go there with Varshall for today if he does hit at a high spot in the order, especially because it makes it a lot easier to get to Trevor Bauer. Finishing up with things to watch, there are only 2 teams we have not discussed yet on this slate. Those 2 teams are the Braves and the Rangers. Braves are facing Adbert Alzolay, and he doesn't go deep enough in games to be used as a pitcher. Like, he's still got a pretty low pitch count, also a really tough matchup. That makes it hard to use him, but it's also hard to stack the Braves. I think he's pretty good. So they're a stay away from me, not using Alzolay and not using the Braves either. The Rangers facing Martin Perez. That's a great matchup for him, but it's also a great matchup for them. You know, a movable object against a stoppable force. If anything, I would look at one-offs here with the righties. Nick Solak is $2,900. That'd be the main thing on my radar here. I don't think the matchup is enough to get me to use Perez, but I can use some of the right-handed batters facing him just because, you know, not ideal. So that's where we're at with this slate. It is rough. It is grisly. It is gruesome. We're going to talk about it again later today. 4 p.m. Eastern, FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. If there are any things I glossed over, any disagreements you may have with things I said, feel free to hit me up. That will be today, 4 p.m. Eastern, FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Get your questions in. We'll talk about tonight's slate. Back again tomorrow with that as well. But also, NFL Draft live streams tonight and tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're giving away an NFL jersey of your choice if you are the winner of that contest. So make sure you tune in, 8 p.m. Eastern today, and watch it on FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter for the first round DFS betting and season-long implications of the NFL Draft. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Make sure you check out Tom Vecchio at the NBA and NHL podcast. I'll have an NASCAR podcast tomorrow for Kansas as well for a very unique race. So should be a fun week here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video component of this podcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck. And I sincerely mean that to you on tonight's slate, because we will need it to escape this thing. We'll see how it goes. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.